Hey y'all, welcome back again to Healthy Design. So I thought today we tried to kind of break down the last few videos, few episodes of fat loss and kind of try to make it practical. I think maybe one of the best ways to do this, I like kind of the categories that Lyle McDonald uses. All he's doing is breaking people down into body fat ranges. And so I think that's kind of a good starting point, and that way you can kind of see maybe the progression a little bit of how things go. And then I think, still it's the general principles, but it's just they're applied more specifically in each context. So the categories are like, 10 to, well, 15% below for men. For women, you want to add, like 7 to 10%. So, like for women, they really don't want to be below 15% for a very long period of time because again issues with hormones, losing their menstrual cycle, things like that. But in general, if men are like 15 and below, then they're fairly lean. Women like 22% below, they're pretty lean. Then you move up like 15% to 25%. So obviously if you're around 15, say a little bit above or a little bit below, you could follow that information for the group above or that information for the group below. um, and then the next category, so category 3 is the like 25 to 35% body fat. And again, remember, if we're trying to lose weight, we don't want to just lose any weight no matter what it is. We want to try to lose body fat. That's where we primarily want that weight to come from, because that's going to help us to be healthy. And so, again, if we're doing this and we're just starting a diet, we're going to have to cut calories some because there has to be a deficit there for our body to meet that needs with what it's already stored up. So in this case, we're hoping it's primarily coming from body fat. We do have stored carbohydrates and then muscle, our gut lining, different things like that. Or it's kind of some of the stored protein in a sense if it needs it. So if we're starting with that category 3, um, we have someone who's 25 to 35% body fat. They may or may not be able to exercise initially, for a lot of different reasons. And so what they may have to do is start with that calorie deficit. And again, I think kind of the principle is try to find the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest thing you can do. So in this case, the easiest thing you can cut from your diet that you can do consistently. And so again, if we use like kind of someone who's drinking two liters of Coke a day or 1 liter of Coke a day, if we can cut that down, to where like they just have Coke with one meal during the day. So now let's say we've cut it down to where now that bottle they're only drinking a quarter of it. That's going to be a decent amount of calories cut right there. They're not having to deprive themselves. I do think one of the biggest principles, we don't want to deprive ourselves of anything, because as soon as you say I can't have something, or I can't eat that, that's going to be the thing you crave. And so we can have anything we want. Food's not inherently good or evil. It's just it's going to have calories with it, and some are, when it comes to fat loss, are going to be better than others. And trying to avoid some of the processed food is a good idea. But let's say some of those changes are a little too hard, so start with something simple like cutting down on the soda intake, and then from there you can start to kind of quote unquote clean things up a little bit. I don't think there's truly clean foods or unclean foods. What most people mean by that, clean foods tend to be more real foods, so things that are more nutrient dense. Most of the processed food, especially the ultra processed food, it's not nutrient dense. It's calorie dense and then doesn't have hardly any nutrients in it. We do want to start to avoid those, especially as we continue down our fat loss journey, because we're going to have fewer calories we have to work with. So we want to make sure we get as many nutrients in those calories as possible. And so that's why I do think it's a good idea to kind of quote unquote clean things up a little bit. It's just so you can get enough nutrients in, with the food you have available. And so another big thing, is try to make sure you're getting protein in. At that, maybe like using lean body mass might be a better way of doing it. And so I would say, just at least For women, maybe try to get in like 100 grams of protein per day, which will seem like a lot for many people. For men, I guess it kind of depends on your size. So that's, that 1 gram per pound of lean body mass might come in handy. If you're at that category 3, that higher body fat percentage, your protein requirements are going to be less than someone who's at a lower body fat percentage. I'm not saying it's going to be this huge difference, like, half or whatever, but it's going to be a little bit less. So the other good thing about protein is it's going to help to be filling. So again, when we're eating less, we have that protein in there to help us try to feel full and not just be hungry and ravenous all the time. So what I would say is, try to kind of find some ways where you can kind of slowly add some protein. So carbs are kind of the easiest thing to cut out, just because there is no essential carbohydrate. I'm not trying to say carbs are evil. I just think they're very powerful. We want to use them to our advantage for different things. So we can use them to our advantage to build muscle. We can use them to our advantage to lose fat and kind of impact insulin resistance for the better and different things along those lines. And we have a certain amount of protein we're going to have to eat every day and a certain amount of fat we're going to have to eat every day to get essential nutrients in. So there's only so far we can cut those two things. That leaves carbohydrates. I'm not saying, as things go down, maybe that's the only place you cut from, but there's going to come a point where that is the case. So with the carbohydrates, maybe take some of them out of your diet, replace a little bit with protein, replace a little bit with fat, and that should be helpful. And then so try to figure out what you can do. I'm hoping you can get maybe a 500 calorie deficit. That should lead to a pound a week. If you're at 35%, 25 to 35%, you might be able to cut even more calories than that. But I think kind of starting easy, especially if you've never done this before, and just kind of look at it as an experiment. So you make some changes, make them easy to do. Don't expect huge losses or anything, but just do that consistently and start to build a routine. So we've talked about before, the biggest issue with diets is not losing weight. If you put people on any kind of decent diet, they're going to lose weight. The problem is, can you keep the weight off once the diet's over with, or do they gain it back? And that maintenance side of things, the biggest issue seems to be some of those lifestyle factors. So making things a habit to where you keep doing these things afterwards. And again, we've talked a little bit about exercise and how it doesn't burn that many calories. And so you can't kind of out exercise a bad diet, where exercise has a ton of health impacts and benefits. So, I think we need to do it from that standpoint. From the diet side, exercise seems to help more on the maintenance side rather than losing all the weight in the first place. So let's say that person, they're able to make some cuts in their calories, and so they do that for a while, and again, they can't really exercise right now. They're still going to be moving around their house, moving around in society, so we can track kind of step count. So maybe they could see where their step count is. I'm just going to throw out a number. Let's say they're at 2,000. Maybe they can add even just 100 steps. Just walk a little bit more in their house, or park a little bit further, from the grocery store, wherever it is they are. So just small little changes, something that shouldn't be too much, and shouldn't be anything they really notice. And then they can track their scale weight, track different things, and see that scale moving down. And then if they can feel better, maybe they can start walking a little bit more, so they get even more steps in. And so I think that's kind of what maybe that category 3 that they need to do. They might, again, not be able to exercise to start with, so going for like a long walk, riding a bike or whatever, and lifting weights might be out of the question. And so let's get the weight down some. Let's lose some of that excess body fat. When they start feeling better, then we start adding some of those things in, or increasing those things. So increasing the step count. And then maybe we finally get to a point where they can exercise. Initially, all we need to do is just body weight. So it's not like now you have to go get a gym membership and start doing the current bodybuilders workout routine and be there for 2 hours at a time. I would say, if just doing body weight exercises at home, you could do a body weight squat, push up, even on your knees, just or where you're kind of leaning against the kitchen counter. It'll be easier too. You can push that way. A great thing to do is maybe get some of the exercise bands because that allows you a lot of variability. You can change things up, and that will let you kind of do some rows or pull downs where you get more of your back, and then you can do it for arms as well. But I mean, you can even use like soup cans or something um, to work out arms and press overhead, different things. So, pick, you know, I would say if you can, try to cover the 4 basic movements. So that's why I kind of like exercise as well. We cover different movement patterns we come up against in life, and it just helps us to be better for them. So squat, hinge, push, pull. If you cover those 4 movements, you've covered most muscles in your body. And so going by that, you could do like say 2 sets of 4 different exercises. It's not going to take you very long. You could also pick like 8 exercises, do one to start with, and you can get done with that in 15 to 30 minutes for sure. Um, and then as you continue down that path, maybe you get to the point where body weight's no longer challenging, and then maybe adding in some dumbbells, a little bit heavier bands for the different work. That allows you to progress and keep moving. And so a lot of this can be done at home and doesn't require anything too fancy. Um, you can get some light. If you're going to go with dumbbells, I would get my recommendation is get ones that are adjustable just because it ends up being cheaper. If you buy the fixed dumbbells and then you get ones that are 3 pounds, 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 12 pounds, 15, it starts adding up pretty quick. So you can get the ones where you add the weight and have a collar to keep the weight on the dumbbell, or you can buy the adjustable dumbbells where they might be like 3 to 25 pounds or something like that. And that gives you a long time to kind of progress up, and it takes up a whole lot less space. So that's something to keep in mind, just might be practical. Like Power Block, they do have ones that go from like 10 to 90 and even over 90 pounds. That's not where I think I would start with. One, the price point, it's, at least a few $100s, if not several $100s to do that. But getting something a little bit smaller will probably let you progress for several months or maybe even a year or two. And so that's kind of what I would recommend. And so then you can kind of keep building on things. So hopefully as you're doing that, you notice the body fat's coming down, you're feeling better and wanting to move a little bit more and add these things in. And if you do that long enough, then you're going to be in that 15 to 25% range. So in that range, I would think most people probably are able to exercise some. So they're able to, walk, they're able to at least do body weight, if not some resistance training with weights. And so now we kind of move into that range. So now let's make sure, for them, same kind of thing. If you're from that 25 to 35% and now you've moved into that, you basically want to kind of keep doing what you're doing. Keep progressing. Say we're going to still have to cut calories some eventually. There's going to come a point where that cut doesn't get us results anymore. So now we need to cut a little bit more. But now we can probably cut some calories and increase activity, which is going to give us a little bit bigger of a calorie deficit. So maybe we cut 500 from the diet, but now we're moving a little bit more. So maybe we get an extra 100, 150 calories from that. And so now we've got like a 650 calorie deficit that our body has to meet, and that should lead to some fat loss. Again, one of the big things with exercise and the reason for the protein intake being high is that helps to prevent lean body mass loss and definitely helps to prevent muscle loss. We still are going to lose some lean body mass because again, it's bone mineral density, it's water, it's glycogen, it's everything that's not fat mass. And so there's going to be some things that happen there. Again, we talked a little bit about this with like GLP-1s and different things, but you see like on poorly run diets, very low calorie diets, you can see a lot of lean body mass loss too. Some of it being muscle, same with the GLP-1, some of it being muscle. But if it's, let's say 50% lean body mass loss, that doesn't mean 50% muscle loss. But the way to limit that is to increase protein and to have some exercise in there. There was one study done, I don't remember the exact details, but I've heard Lyle McDonald talk about it. They had a group where they made sure they were eating enough protein, and I don't remember, it's like the total fat loss was like right around 10 pounds, like 4 kilos or so. And 3.8 was fat. So it's like only this small part of a kilo. So like maybe a pound was lean body mass loss. And that's because of their protein. The other group who didn't eat that amount of protein, you know, it wasn't quite half and half, but they lost body weight too, so it might have been another 4 kilos, but like 2.8 kilos was fat, and so that means that another part of it, so maybe like 25% to 30% was lean body mass. So that's why that's important. So again, one thing I didn't talk about with that higher group, it's going to be hard to just diet straight through week after week after week after week, month after month after month. And to think about doing that for a year would be hard, I think. And so I do like the concept of diet breaks. But I do think if we're at that 25 to 35%, we probably don't need a diet break for a while, just because our body has all this excess energy stored. And so in that case, maybe go at least 3 months, so 12, maybe even 16 weeks. Some of the other benefits from this is it might help change taste buds a little bit too. I know for me, when I first started kind of looking into this, I was drinking like Coke every day and different things. And as I kind of cut that out, and cut other things out, that sweet, what I considered sweet before, it had to be pretty sweet for me to taste it. And then after cutting those things out, just eating like normal fruit or whatever, it's like, holy cow, this has a ton of sweetness to it. I can't imagine anything more. So like, going to get like a vanilla latte or something, I can't do that. It's just that sweetness now is overpowering. So taste buds do change, and we just got to give them time to. And so doing that consistently for a while might help out, and then that can kind of change some of the cravings that we're having too, because and that could be a big difference. It definitely play a part in that maintenance side too once the diet's over. But let's say like every 12, 16 weeks, you take a week, maybe 2 week diet break where you just eat at maintenance. Now, if you've lost, if you figured out your maintenance before you started and you've lost some weight, then your maintenance level is going to be down. So we want to kind of eat at what you think is that normal or that new maintenance level. Do that for a week or two, and then cut the calories back, and add some activity, and do that for another 12 to 16 weeks, and then repeat. Now, if we're in that 15 to 25% range, we may want to take that diet break every 8 to 12 weeks. You might, as you get leaner, the big mistake I think a lot of people do, I'm guilty of it as well, is that when you get leaner and you're trying to lose that last little bit or lose more, you go even harder. That can work well when you're at the higher percentages, but once you start getting down in the really low percentages, you can't go as hard, or then you're going to be more likely to lose some of the muscle and lean body mass. And so we got to have, it's kind of funny that in a sense you kind of go a little bit easier on the deficits as you get leaner rather than at the beginning. So that's why I say like maybe 8 to 12 weeks. If you're in that 15 to 25% body fat, take that diet break where you eat again at maintenance and then go back on the diet. When you're kind of 10% and below, it might be every 4 to 8 weeks that you have to take a diet break. And what they've shown with this too is that you don't have to take the diet break to lose body fat and lose weight. So I don't want it to make it sound like that. That's not the case. I think what it can help you do is it gives you a chance to practice maintenance. That's not something that I've done very well with, because normally I end up wanting to gain weight or lose weight, gain some muscle or lose some body fat. And so that gives you a chance to practice that, which I think then can make the results at the end more sustainable, because now you know how to maintain. And then the other side is it kind of just gives us a mental break from it. It can be hard eating less all the time, and so there's different things there that can be real helpful. Part of, the other thing when you're at those higher percentages, I would try to keep the diet, how you're doing it, as simple as possible, because then it should be easier to follow. As you get leaner, there's going to be some different things you can do, and there's some really advanced, I guess, strategies for fat loss that are very effective, but I don't think they're needed when you're at those higher percentages. I think you're gonna be working harder than you need to get the results that you're getting. And so let's try to keep it easy and save those more difficult things, or those more difficult things to apply for later on when we kind of need them. Our body needs it to continue to lose the body fat. So if you're in that 15 to 25% range, you should be able to exercise, or have already been exercising. Again, I think like 2, maybe 3 times a week, a full body workout each time that lasts, 20, 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes at most if you're just, doing even more. That's going to give you a whole bunch of results. So it's not that you need to be lifting weights, 5, 6 times a week. Definitely don't need to be doing it twice a day or anything like that. But, I think if you can just get in the habit of walking, so maybe now we're doing 20, 30-minute walks. Could be even longer than that. You can build up over that. Maybe do that every day just to help get the step count number up, and then exercise with weights. Maybe now either you've got some different things at home to use, so like dumbbells, a bench, some bands that can give you a whole lot of exercises you can do and progress over time as well. And then you do that 2-3 times a week, should be able to build some muscle and lose some body fat. And so that's one of the good things if you're at those higher percentages, is that you can actually do recomposition. And that means that some of the weight you're going to be losing, you're going to be losing body fat, but you're going to be building muscle. So keep an eye on that, because the scale weight may not change as much as you would want it to. But if you're noticing like clothes fitting differently and fitting better, then that's kind of what's going on. That yes, you're losing some body fat, but you're gaining muscle, and that's why the scale weight might not be changing, but that's why things fit better, you feel better, etc. So again, with the scale, I like that as a tool, but that's all it is. It's just giving us information. It's not the end all be all, and it doesn't determine our value, self-worth, etc. Now, once you start getting kind of that 15% and below, should be exercising. That shouldn't be an issue at all. You can continue with the same thing if you just keep cutting calories little by little. You can add the step count up. There's going to come a point where you can't do more because you're just not going to have the ability to cut things. So again, that's why when you seem to kind of stall at those lower percentages, you may actually have to kind of diet less in a sense. So let me use kind of what I'm doing now as an example for this. What I'm doing now is I'm eating very low carbohydrate to help cut calories Monday through Friday. Then on Saturday, let me back up. So I eat that on Monday through Friday, and I'm still exercising. I like exercise, so I do exercise about 5 times a week, and I walk pretty much every day. Depending on rain and things, I may not get the same number of steps each day, but right now I'm averaging around 12,000. And that's because I enjoy it. So I'm not trying to say like that's the key. Everybody has to do that. As the season progresses and we move even deeper into the summer, I'll probably walk even more than that just to be outside more. Because again, I enjoy it. I'm not trying to say that's the only way to do it. There's plenty of ways. And so for me right now, when I'm eating that low carb Monday through Friday with the exercise and things, it helps to deplete the glycogen that's stored in my muscles. And there's a certain type of fatigue you can kind of tell with that too. And so then on Saturday, I will eat 700 grams of carbohydrates, still keep my protein up there pretty high. And I'll have, some fat. I don't necessarily add it in. It's just going to be there naturally in the food. So that's a huge increase in calories compared to that Monday through Friday, because there I'm eating between probably 1 and 1.5 grams of protein. Not up to 1, so probably like 1 to 1.25 grams of protein per pound. And then, I'll add in some fat, just a little bit to make sure that I'm getting all the essentials there. Carbohydrates are kept really low. And then again, Saturday, go really high on the carbohydrates, probably around that 1 gram per pound for protein. And then whatever fat comes in, it's going to be fine with all the food that I'm eating. Sunday is still more than Monday through Friday, but less than Saturday. So on that day, again, 1 to 1.25 grams per pound of protein. And then I think I said that wrong. 1 to 1.25 grams of protein per pound of, body weight. And then 250 grams of carbs. And again, fat's kind of where it is. And so that helps to kind of replenish that glycogen. So the muscles are ready to soak up all those carbohydrates coming in. And so a lot of times what you'll find with this, and some of this is similar to what some of the bodybuilders do leading into a show, like they'll be kind of depleted and then they refill glycogen to look full and stuff. So it's kind of interesting that sometimes you eat that and you've eaten a whole lot more than what you have done, but you look a lot better the next day or 2 days later, depending on if you do it right, in a sense. Because with the carbohydrates, you're going to come in some water, so there's going to be a huge increase in weight. But sometimes you look better and look leaner. And if you kind of go overboard, let's say, and get too much water, or just that's how your body kind of handles things, then you may not see all the definition and stuff that day, but within a couple days, that water weight's gone once you get back on the low carbohydrates, and you'll look better. So that's something that can be really helpful to keep in mind is, and then you see kind of how your body responds to things too. So I think that's, for me, all of this stuff is just kind of an experiment. I just like to see what happens. If I turn this dial, what happens? If I push here, what happens? I like that part of it. My brain's always, I guess, working that way. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. As I continue on and get leaner, I may have to change that to where I'm only kind of doing 4 days of kind of hard dieting, and then there's 3 days where I'm eating at maintenance or a little bit above. So, but what most people think is, oh, I'm not losing, so I need to cut back. So now I need to do 6 days of hard dieting and on 1 day where I'm not. And that's actually not the case. You need to go down a little bit. So I do think even at those higher body fat percentages, so that category 3, category 2, having a day or maybe 2 days where you eat at maintenance during the week rather than dieting hard can be helpful. Again, I don't think it's definitely not necessary from a physiological side, but from that mental side and getting that mental break, it can make a huge difference. Knowing that, oh, okay, I just have to diet for 6 days and then I can eat, a little bit more food, or diet for 5 days, eat, more normal for 2 days. And then I've only got to do this for, 8 weeks, and then I can do that for, and, eat a little bit more for a week or two and then go back to it. So I do think there's some benefits, but again, I do think it's more from that mental side. The longer diet break and that eating at maintenance levels can make a difference too, possibly with some of the hormones and different things like that. One of the other things I've heard Eric Helms, I think it was Eric Helms, talk about is he trains or coaches athletes like bodybuilders, men and women. And by having some of those, hard dieting days during the week, easier dieting days during the week, that women are able to diet longer before losing their menstrual cycle, which can have some tremendous impacts on their bone mineral density, overall health, and different things. So I think that's another plus for it. And if you're down in that 15% below range for men, 22% below for women, most likely you've already been exercising for a long time. So hopefully by this point you kind of know what works well for your body. By this point too, you probably know what works pretty well for your body as far as diet goes. So do those things. And I think, again, treat all this as an experiment, so you can try different things, different diets. I don't think there's any magic with stuff as long as the basics are met. Protein intake's met, sufficient calorie deficits met, getting essential fats, and then hopefully able to exercise. Then you could eat a whole lot of different ways. You could do a whole lot of different exercises. So just keep those basics in mind. But if you've been doing this for a while, you should kind of know what works for you. If you don't, like let's say you were just kind of always naturally lean, but now you want to try to get leaner, then experiment with things. Give it 4 weeks or so and see. And maybe something works for you, maybe it doesn't. That's fine. Things don't work for everybody, so that's not a it's not a reflection on you or you as a person. Um, One thing I should say, sorry, I kind of ramble and go back and forth. With the diet breaks, you do need to keep in mind that that's just going to mean that you are, in a sense, dieting longer. It's going to, you'll be in a true diet probably about the same length of time if you did it just straight through, but the time frame is going to be longer because you have these different breaks inserted. So that's going to extend the time period. I only say that if you have like a deadline you're trying to meet, it could impact that a little bit. Um, I tried to, so I think that's it for today. I've already been talking a lot. What I was trying to do is just give you some practical tips. Nothing too specific because I don't want you to think like that's the only way to do it. But again, just kind of giving you some principles to where you can apply it in a lot of different ways and see what works for you. Um, I hope this was helpful. Again, what I'm doing, have those 5 days where it's a pretty low, deficit, or a pretty big deficit, I guess I should say, in calories, and then eat more on the other 2 days. And I keep losing some body fat, and I don't feel like I'm losing any muscle or anything either. Still able to work out hard. I'm not at the point now where I'm tired or anything. And probably when you start getting to that point, if you're on that lean side, if you're not doing it for bodybuilding competition, a sport, or something else, um, that's probably the sign that you're low enough and don't need to go any lower from a health standpoint, is what I'm talking about. So I've never luckily gone so low to where like I just had no energy during the day, and really where my sports performance suffered. Um, Even where I am now, what I've noticed on those days where I am depleted, my strength output or kind of short burst is still pretty good. Um, I will feel tired after that. And so, like, if I'm climbing, I can do some hard moves or, do a hard boulder problem, but I may be real tired after doing it, like, more so than normal. But if I rest a little bit longer, that recovers and I'm able to do another high quality attempt or whatever. Um, with weight, same thing. Like, I'll be a little bit tired on that set, but after that set's done, I can rest a little bit and then it comes back and I'm able to go. Now after like that, and I try to do my harder workouts on the weekend when I have more of the carbohydrates in to replenish things too. And so that tends to work pretty well for me. Um, and then during the week, some of the exercises are meant to kind of help deplete some of that glycogen. So like some of those workouts are higher rep, shorter rest intervals, which I do not enjoy. I've always enjoyed more of the short burst activities. I mean, that's why I sprint, that's why I boulder. I find those enjoyable. I don't like long climbs. I do not like long runs, that's for sure. Um, and then a lot of times, even on the weights, for years and years, like, I probably didn't do more than, definitely not more than 10 reps, maybe not even more than like 5 reps for a long time, because I like kind of that strength and power side of things. So my point with all that is just that there's many different ways to do it. Figure out what works well for you, because maybe you don't like the short burst activity, you like things a little bit longer. So do that. Because there's more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak. All right, guys, let me know if you have any specific questions. I'll address them as best I can, and hope you enjoy. I'll see you next time. Bye.